Welcome to the pod focusing on the aftermath and recovery from the devastating Palisades fires of January 2025. Journalist Joel Pollack, entrepreneur Oren Ezra, and technology expert Ron Goldschmidt serve up to the moment vital news and information, discuss the ongoing recovery efforts, and introduce us to the individuals and trades who are playing key roles in rebuilding our cherished communities. We're diving into the deep end and learning quickly how we can move forward together. We know the pain because we're living real-time news, stories, resources, and insights on the ongoing recovery effort. Buckle up. We're three homeless guys.
Welcome to Three Homeless Guys, the podcast about the Palisades fire and the rebuilding effort. I'm Joel Pollack, journalist here and also part-time stay-at-home dad, I suppose. And I'm here with technology expert Ron Goldschmidt and entrepreneur Oren Ezra. And we are very pleased to welcome a very special guest. In addition to my 8-month-old son, we're also happy to have Kaye Steinsapir from J. Conway, just above where I live, and she is very well known to the Palisades community through the Team Molly Foundation and through all of her activism in the community. So first of all, let me just say welcome to Kaye on behalf of all of us, and we'll give you a more complete introduction later after we go through a few news items. But welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
All right, let me explain first why this little guy is here. This is a story about the fire as well as about just the reality of two working parents. So he's 8 months old now, and he was just about 3.5 months old on the day of the fire. And at that time, we had a nanny who is excellent, if anyone needs a recommendation. And she was walking with him in the stroller outside our house when she saw and smelled the smoke up the hill. And she sent me a text message at 10:42 a.m., which was about 18 minutes or so after the fire first started. And because of the tone of her text message, I knew we probably had to evacuate. So the reason that we got out as quickly as we did ahead of the massive traffic jam on Sunset Boulevard was because of this guy and because of a very, very conscientious nanny. And we were able to evacuate and not have to abandon our car and everything. He's here with me, partly because of the fire also. My wife, as you may know, is working in D.C. at the moment. We're going back and forth a little bit. She's the chief economist of the Department of Labor, and she's in town in L.A. for a conference of different human resources executives talking about the labor market. And she was going to have the Pacific Palisades Early Childhood Center, the Palisades Jewish Early Childhood Center, the one run by the Chabad on Sunset and PCH, or formerly by Sunset and PCH, Sunset and Los Leones, really. They had moved to a location near where we are in the Pico Robertson neighborhood, but somebody, I don't know who, reported some kind of fire code violation or something. So they were shut down and they had to move. And that meant we had no childcare option for the week that she's in town. So Dad is the childcare option. So here I am. And he's a really good guy. He had a little bit of a fever. So I've been dealing with that today as well. But that's why we have young Raphael here. He's now, as I mentioned, almost 8 months old. And I'm going to be making sure he's happy during the podcast. So if you hear little baby sounds, that's why.
He's very cute.
Very cute. And we are temporarily going to call ourselves 3 men and a baby plus Kaye just for this episode. Instead of 3 homeless guys. So, Joel, there's been some news on your end. You want to update us on that?
Yes. So in addition to my childcare news, there's also some breaking news that you actually pointed out to me yesterday, Ron, which was that State Farm, which requested a 17% increase, or actually received a 17% increase from the California Insurance Commissioner, is now asking for another 11%, which brings it close to 30%. And many people are pretty angry about that because they feel that State Farm hasn't honored its obligations to policyholders in the Pacific Palisades and also in the Eaton fire. We had Joy Chen on couple of weeks ago, and she's organized a lot of the protests there, and she's connected with the Palisades community now as well. So State Farm is asking for 30%. And we've talked about this before, that preventing insurance companies from raising prices might drive some of them out of the state. So on the one hand, you want to let them run a business. But on the other hand, in the middle of this disaster, State Farm and other companies really haven't done very well. And actually, we should talk about that again in one of our future episodes. Senator Josh Hawley from Missouri, who's something of a controversial figure, actually summarized the case against what the insurance companies are doing pretty well. So we should play that clip. And I've actually reached out to his office about having him on the show, or someone in his office, to talk about the insurance issues as well. So that's the other big piece of news. And then I wanted to share something with you. You know that I sometimes do these hikes on the trails around Pacific Palisades, even though they're all officially closed, and I suppose I'm not supposed to be there. But I went up to see if the Paseo Miramar Trail was still intact, because, as you know, the Temescal Canyon one was almost completely destroyed by the mudslides or mud flows after the heavy rains following the fire. And I was very pleasantly surprised to find that that trail is almost completely intact. It's in excellent condition, except for some overgrown plants and a few bits of debris here and there. It was in the fire, but there are many trees that survived. And I want to just show you a couple of videos I took when I was up there. The first video is, I believe, a video of the view of Pacific Palisades from the Paseo Miramar Trail. And, Oren, let's try to show that first clip if we could. So you can see the wild mustard flowers there. All of that was completely burned. You can see the green growing back. There's Sunset Mesa in the distance. And then finally, the end of the trail at Parker Mesa with that tree. By the way, that tree is still alive at the end of the trail, and the wooden benches at the end of the trail where people can sit and admire the view, they're still intact. They didn't burn, even though much around them burned. And then let me show you the second clip. This is of Oren and Ron's neighborhood. This is of Sunset Mesa. And I'll let you guys describe what we're seeing here after you have a look at the clip. Let's play that second one. So we're looking down. This is from the very top, from Parker Mesa. I zoomed in and took this. And there you see the Getty Villa, and then Sunset Mesa. And it takes a while to figure out what you're looking at, really. But a lot of those lots have been cleared. That's the yellow patchwork down there. And then you can see Topanga Beach over there with the beautiful surf. What are you guys thinking as you look at that video?
I mean, I've been to the neighborhood many times. Our debris removal is actually in our back mirror. We've both cleared our lots right now. There's a lot of activity around the neighborhood around that, but it's kind of, like being there is actually kind of depressing. Just because, you see a few standing homes. There's a lot of, hubbub, construction and debris clearance and all that stuff. But it really is pretty clear, even getting in and getting out, that like unless you have a standing home and you kind of have to move back in, that it's not going to be a great place to be in for the next couple of years. And so, it's kind of, in some way invigorating to see that the debris is being cleaned and there is forward momentum. However, I don't think it's particularly going to be a great place to live for the next couple of years. I don't know what Oren thinks.
Yeah, so I paused on over here because you see these two huge water reservoirs that we have in the neighborhood. And I can tell you that my house burned down because the fire department that was there didn't have water to take it down. There was when I left the house the last time, I was back and forth, but the last time probably was around noon, something like this. And there was I want to say probably 10 or more fire trucks in the beginning, at the entrance to the neighborhood, and they just didn't have water. And I'm looking at these two water reservoirs and I'm asking myself, if these two water reservoirs were not just sitting over there and they had water in, would they be able to save our neighborhood? And while looking at it from 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 this distance and seeing what happened to the neighborhood, and just again thinking about it, like how many years is it going to get to rebuild it? And then if somebody his house didn't burn down, I have a friend that his house didn't burn down, and I met with him this week, and I asked him, so when are you planning on going back? He said, you know what, I tried to go back Saturday night. I said, okay, Saturday night, at least Sunday nobody is working, at least I get one night in my house. And he said that at 6 a.m. already there was trucks and like excavators and everything. So I don't know. So, like when I went to my lot, me and Ron went to our lots this weekend. It's making you feel great, you know. Suddenly you see an empty lot. It's like an empty canvas. You're thinking, hey, I can build this, I can do this, I can do like so many things. But then again, how long is it going to take? State Farm, how long is it going to take for me to know how much money I'm getting? Can I rebuild the house that I had or not? According to my adjuster, the way it's working is like they're putting a quote on, and now you have to start building. And if prices have changes while you're doing it, suddenly the price of lumber goes up, then you submit to them, and then they approve or not. So I feel like my insurance got, holding me by the balls, no other way to say it. And I don't know what can I build or what I can't. And again, it's adding
It's
up to
pretty
the
tough.
list of red tapes.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that as well as construction. I know we have a lot of interest in that as well as we head into rebuilding, hopefully. But let's bring Kaye in. And Kaye Steinsapir is someone I've known about ever since I moved to the Palisades, someone that everyone in the neighborhood admires and respects tremendously. And I'll just read some of her bio, which is incredibly impressive, not just because of all her achievements, but because of all the incredible challenges that she's overcome. She defied the odds by attending college and law school after a tough childhood, and she became an accomplished attorney at an international law firm. She practiced for 20 years. Hard to believe that when you see Kaye, but she has a very lengthy legal career behind her. And then shortly after the birth of her third child at age 39, she was diagnosed with stage 3B breast cancer. And she battled against breast cancer. And of course, on cue, my milk bottle falls down. So let's go back to the closest I can get to breastfeeding. But anyway, she fought through all of that, chemotherapy, radiation, everything. And then just as she was coming back into health, her beautiful 12-year-old daughter, Molly, was tragically killed in an accident. And you can actually see a beautiful portrait of Molly on that mural that we showed a few episodes ago, right opposite the Palisades Charter High School on Temescal Canyon Road. And she's had tremendous experience in surviving tragedies and difficult circumstances. She has two sons as well, Nathaniel and Ellie, and her husband is also very active in the community, and they've started the foundation that bears Molly's name, which has raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for local causes, for things that were important to Molly, and everything gets spent on charity. It's not a organization with huge amounts of overhead and big expenditures. It's really focused on improving Molly's community. And Kaye, I think you would say also that you feel Molly's presence in the community still, and certainly all of your neighbors do. So welcome to Three Homeless Guys, and tell us a little bit about yourself and your experience with the fire.
Thanks for having me. We, like all of you, are kind of living through the aftermath of the fire. We are fortunate to have a standing home, but our home on J. Conway is just one of a handful of homes that are still standing. So we're kind of in the situation you described your friend being in. Even if we wanted to go back and spend a night, we couldn't, because we don't even have water or power or anything still. But it's going to be a long time before we're going to be able to, consider being back in the house. But we are optimistic about the recovery and the rebuilding process. We're as involved as we possibly can be. I recognize myself as being in a more privileged position vis-a-vis many of my neighbors like you who lost homes. Like I have a standing home, I've got good insurance, and I can give. It's a time when I can give to a community that's given so much to me when I really needed it, both with my cancer battle and with losing Molly. The Palisades really sustained us in real ways. So I now find myself in the relatively fortunate position of having a bit more stability than some, even though we're displaced, and that's tough. I can be of service, and so that's what I try to do. I always try to do whatever I can. I'm in a fortunate position also of being able to lead a life of service. I spent my 20 years toiling away at the law firm, and I plan to go back, but between the cancer battle and then Molly's passing during the pandemic, by the way, Molly died in the middle of the pandemic. It just everything changed so tremendously that it just wasn't possible. So here I am, and what I try to do is live a life of service and a life of meaning. And right now, that means showing up for the community in whatever ways I possibly can.
So, Team Molly has been there on the front lines helping people since the fire. You brought families together at Kehillat Israel at KI, one of the two major synagogues in town, and you prepared welcome bags for people who had lost everything and didn't have clothes, didn't have blankets, towels. And you've also created a space where people come together, usually on weekends, to meet one another, which is it's as important, I think, as the material support that you've provided. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, it's actually evolved. So initially, so one of my first thoughts after the fire was like, okay, what can I do to help? Where can I be most impactful? And I thought, okay, we need space because everyone's displaced. All my friends are scattered everywhere, and we need physical space. It can't be like the pandemic again, where we aren't together. And especially because of the enormous challenges we face and the decisions we need to make that impact each other. We need to have space to be together. So that's kind of what I set out to do. And I got a weekly community space at the Colorado Center in Santa Monica. And that was so great and successful and helpful. And we had such a lot of use for, that the space provided for the community that we actually opened a full-time space now. So that, and it kind of evolved naturally. People were asking me if I could accept donations for the fire victims and keep them at the community room that I had. And that was only like 4 hours a week for Team Molly and our fire victim community. And the rest of the time was used by other people. So I took those donations anyway, just thinking, okay, I'm going to find a way to get these into the hands of both Palisades, Altadena, and also Malibu fire victims. And then this space came into my orbit. I was able to get this space and set up full-time community room space here, donations. People can come and pick up new donations that we're constantly refilling and adding to. And this is interesting. I didn't think about this when I set this up, but people got donations after the fires that sometimes they can't use, and they feel they don't want to waste them, but like someone else picked them up, or they don't fit, or whatever the case may be. And so what has been happening since we opened the space is it's kind of like a little library, like with books, it's like people will take things and they will also leave like new items here that they collected as donations. And it kind of serves a dual purpose. It's like they don't have to worry about what to do with those items, and other people are very happy to get them. So it's worked out.
So this is the Team Molly community space, and I'm going to give the address. It's 11400 West Olympic Boulevard, Suite 300 in LA. And that's full time. You can go anytime during the week.
Yeah, it's full time. We just had our first event. It's all kind of just we're evolving. We're learning and doing as we go, right? So yeah, we just had our first event for Jay Conway people last Sunday, and I felt really good about the decision to take on the space because there was such a positive reaction and such a need, especially for our older, residents, neighbors. I think some of the families tend to be more connected through schools and other things. Some of the older folks, I think really we're very especially grateful to be with community. So we had a great time, and I really want other people. This is not the Kaye Steinsapir space. This is like the community space, and so I really want other people to reach out to me and let me know how they want to use this space. Do they want to get together with their street? Do they want to get together with whatever it is? And I'll help facilitate that. We're already working on getting like yoga classes going here, cooking classes. We've got, each month we'll have a calendar of here's all the events for the month, like here's what they are. And so like, for example, if you wanted to do something for Marquez Knowles, okay, we're going to put that on the schedule for your day. And then we'll have the hours, like when can you come to pick up or drop off donations? So I'll definitely be here for you to come and do that. And then we're going to have, like I said, we're going to do a flower making class. Like the other thing I found is that there are a lot of people who want to support in different ways, right? But they don't know how or where. They need a means and a place to do it. So they can come here and give to the community their yoga class, their sound bath, their flower making. Like they can offer that and have a space for other people to receive it.
It's really amazing. And just for those who've been listening to the podcast for a long time, Jay Conway is a street that winds up from the Marquez Charter School, and it goes uphill, and it has spectacular views. And one of our first guests, Chris Blanchard, lives on that street. He was talking to us about construction and private contractors from a very early stage. So it's a street that's well known to listeners of the podcast. But before I throw it back to Ron and Oren, I have a question about the word victims, which has been troubling me a little bit. We're all called fire victims or fire survivors. And I feel that you've been through experiences that are life and death, where the terms survival means something maybe different than those of us who simply evacuated. I mean, yes, there are some life and death situations involved in this fire, of course, and there were people who had harrowing escapes. But I wonder if that term feels right to you, or if you like it and it's appropriate. I'm just curious about your insights about that.
No, it's interesting. That's a really interesting question to ponder and talk about. I generally don't like victimhood as I try not to. I don't consider myself. I don't define myself as a victim of any of my own life circumstances, and I think that can often hold people back when you have that sort of mentality. So maybe it's not the right word, but it certainly is the word that I hear used a lot. And so if I want to, kind of communicate, hey, this is for anyone affected. Maybe it's impacted or affected residents or something. But what I'm trying to convey is this is your space. This is for you, LA fire community. I don't even know what to call it. What is a better word for this? Impacted or affected, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know, Ron. What do you think?
I personally don't like either of those terms, honestly. Like, I think it's like a little too much for victim, and survivor is like a whole other situation for me that I don't relate to. And I know why people call themselves that, and I'm not judging whatever they want to affiliate with, but I feel both of those terms are just like way too much. I'm looking at Kaye. I know what she really survived, and that's like way above anything else that this fire has brought on to somebody who has not like suffered anything but material impact. To me, at the end of the day, if you survive this fire and you have everybody in your orbit that survived like physically, that is just like so many levels below anything else. And so I don't like either of those terms, and I don't use them. That's just my personal take. I would like to ask Kaye, because we've been getting a lot of these questions, and we want to get some free legal advice while you're here.
Sure.
It's like, what is your take on the lawsuits that are flying around? People have asked us, do we need to? I know you're a labor lawyer, and you're not really like, this is not really your area of specific expertise. But what's your take as a legal mind on some of the conversations that folks have been having about the lawsuits that are circulating? Should they join one? I've had an email saying, if you don't join in the first 6 months, you're not going to be able to join any lawsuits against anybody in the future. Is that true? Like, I don't even know what's true from fact. Can you give us a little bit of insight on that?
Sure. So I'll, as any good lawyer would, I'll give the preface that I'm no longer practicing law, so this is not legal advice. But from my experience from having practiced law for a long time, what for me personally, I have just been this has been sort of on the periphery for me, like, these different cases that are going on. I haven't joined any of them. I haven't, paid real close attention to them. Although another friend of mine who is also an attorney in the Palisades, she lost her home. Someone I really respect, some very, very smart person, very pragmatic. She said, I haven't either, but I did notice that Judge Pragerson and this other gentleman who was, I believe, a mediator for one of the big fire, maybe it was Paradise, like another big, urban fire situation or wildfire situation, had joined one of them. And she said, so I'm paying attention to the one they joined, because that kind of says something. Judge Pragerson's a very well-respected jurist. And it to me suggests something about the legitimacy or the potential legitimacy of the claims if he would sign up to join. So, I don't think that is the case, that, if you don't sign up between, whatever, within the first 6 months, you can't necessarily join. But it kind of depends. Like a class action there has to be a defined class of people who, essentially the best class action is somebody who, the people have all suffered like the same harm. You have to have unifying circumstances. So I suppose maybe somebody could say, well, yeah, our class is comprised of X, Y, Z, whatever, classifications there are. My view is like, I'm not jumping on it, but I'm interested, and I'm more interested as they start to kind of develop and we can read more about what's going on. So I think it's something to consider, but not jump into anything.
We've had a Professor Joseph Suleiman on the show before, and he's a professor at Pepperdine for law, and his take was like some of this stuff will iron itself out as the findings on the investigation of what happened. Do you kind of like feel the same way, that there's really no shot clock here in terms of people joining suits? We've kind of got to wait it out until there's more stuff that comes out, investigation, the report on what happened, which we still don't know.
Yeah.
Is that your general take? That
is my take. Yeah. And I know people are interested in this topic because it was coming up at our gathering we had here at the space on Sunday, and I think it's worth, because I think it's worth exploring and talking about, just like anything else. I think it's worth having those conversations with more people and just kind of getting more information. I would be doing information gathering. And I'm more than happy to facilitate those conversations. Obviously we know a lot of people in the legal world, and I'm more than happy to have roundtable discussions here to kind of flesh out some of these issues and get questions answered.
That's actually a really good idea. I know that us, for instance, we're just starting to look into it, and we were under the impression that we have only 6 months to join a lawsuit. So if you guys would be willing to arrange something at your space, I know that we would love joining. we can push it to all our audience. I know that a lot of people are very interested and kind of lost, between dealing with insurance, dealing with new houses, dealing with work and everything. Now you have another layer that you need to deal with. It would be great if we can get like some advice of where to take it.
And I think it'd be nice to have some sort of different perspectives offered in that, like, I think a lot of these, what I've heard about thus far are like class action plaintiffs' lawyers being the ones to organize those discussions. And obviously they're interested in, in retaining clients, right? So their advice will be shaped a lot by their desire to sign you up as a client. So I think it would be beneficial to kind of bring together a wide range of people who are knowledgeable, who have background in the law, but are not necessarily, the ones that are trying to drum up business.
That would be amazing to have a community meeting where people can just learn about, well, this is exactly why Team Molly has that space. I mean, it's such a huge, valuable resource. And I don't want to switch topics too quickly because I know this is something that we do need to talk more about. But I need to mention that you have also started a podcast of your own since the fire, and you have a Substack called Transforming Pain into Purpose. And I love that title because that really suggests the follow-up to my last question about being a survivor or a victim, but how do you transform pain into purpose? And I know that's a very personal question with you, but you've been a rock for the whole community, and there has to be something that you've learned from your experience.
Yeah, the book I can't ever keep on my shelf is called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. I'm sure you're probably familiar with it. Viktor Frankl was in the Holocaust. He was in Auschwitz, and I think perhaps another camp as well. He went through the most unimaginable torture and suffering, that anyone really could go through. And he came out. He had been writing actually kind of before going in there, and he was a psychologist. And he had been writing his theory is called logotherapy, and it's all about, kind of how do we find meaning in things. And Hirsch Goldberg Polin actually has said that had said to his fellow hostages, he would often quote Viktor Frankl and say, he who has a why can bear with any how. If you have a why, you can bear with whatever how. And so Viktor Frankl had got through his captivity and torture and all of these things because he had a why at the end of it. And unfortunately, tragically, he was dreaming of being reunited with his wife, and when he finally was liberated, found out she'd been killed, and he went on to lead an incredibly long and meaningful and impactful life. And that book has been translated and shared all around the world. It's an extremely impactful book. I think anyone listening should pick up a copy. It's also very short and easy to read. And surprisingly, despite the heavy subject matter, it's uplifting. And somebody just said this to me, like reading something I had written, they commented and said, like, when you're writing about grief, it's not like it's uplifting. It's like, strangely, there's such a difficult and painful topic, but it's uplifting in that, like, I can only survive this if I can find meaning. And I find meaning by doing the things I believe Molly would have done had she lived longer than 12 years. I find meaning in supporting the community that has supported our family so much. And that's, kind of to me what it's all about. So that's how I do it. I try to use all of my challenges. I am constantly trying to use to help other people. And so it's not just for altruistic reasons. That is literally like my fuel. So I had breast cancer. I'm 9 years out. I have at this point talked to hundreds of women who are newly diagnosed with cancer, because anyone who knows me or knows of me will put them in touch with me, and I will drop what I'm doing. Like if somebody texts me right now, I'm going to get on the phone as soon as I get off this podcast. And so sometimes people say like, I can't believe, you're spending the time and you're doing this, and I moderate groups for grieving parents and for breast cancer survivors. And again, it's not because I'm such a great person. It's like, it is the only way I can survive it. So I say to them, no, thank you. Thank you, because you are enabling me to stand up and to keep going and to live rather than to like just exist, because I have to be here for my kids, and I have to show them that a lot of tough things can happen in life, a lot of really hard things, and that are outside of our control. We want to think we control so much, we actually control very little. And so when those things happen, what do we do? And who's there to support us? And how do we give back and support them? And how do we then take the really tough thing that happened to us and we use it to say to somebody else, okay, I know it's really hard right now. Like, I know you're feeling like you don't want to go on. You're feeling scared that you don't know if you're going to survive this disease, or you lost your child and you don't want to get out of bed anymore. But sometimes I think and this is what I try to do, just by seeing somebody else who's doing it makes you think, okay, maybe I can do it. There were people ahead of me in the cancer experience, and I thought, okay, like they did it, so I could do it. And so that's all I do. It's like I'm just paying forward what was done for me by other people. I had other people extend a hand back to me and say, take my hand. I'm climbing up this mountain, and I'm not all the way up, but I'm going to extend my hand to you, and I'm going to pull you up with me. And so all I'm doing is reaching back, and I'm pulling along more people behind me.
I think it's great because what you mentioned that he said, he said it to Eli Sharabi, and Eli Sharabi is now traveling all over, like I think a few days after he got out of captivity, he went on an airplane, went to meet President Trump, and pushing since then. And Eli Sharabi wasn't just like sitting in captivity. He lost his wife, his two daughters, and it's amazing that people get like meaning to their life, and they're pushing to do, like, from the grief, from everything that's happening. You do something for others, and it's easier for you to deal with what happened. And I feel that we never talked about it, me, Ron, and Joel, but I think that one of the things that we immediately did after like a couple of weeks of the fire, we jumped on this podcast. And in the beginning, the podcast was like twice a week. We had like a couple of hours of preparing for it, looking for the people, trying to get more information. And I think that's actually like helped us to cope with whatever is happening, but because we're doing it for the community, we don't have like anybody sponsoring us, and we're making just like $1 million each a month, not more than this, from this podcast. But it's really like, and it's 100% true. And I think that like it's connecting me to things. I see people that take it like this and converting it into helping others. And I think that those are the people that can really build the Palisade, can really build. And this is like, and I'm among the three of us, I'm the less optimistic one. Okay, I'm the one that think that it will take years. But when I see people that are really like willing to help, I think we can overcome it. On the other side, I see people like I mentioned last week, and I heard more stories about it this week. And because you're a lawyer, maybe we can like pick your brain on this one as well. I'm hearing of like some lawyers that are starting to sue their neighbors because they want to change their pitch of the roof or things like this. And again, those are people that are dealing with like trying to get the money for insurance. They're getting like maybe $400 a square foot now from insurance. Now they need to rebuild when the cost is like $800. And now dealing with like a neighbor that's saying, hey, I'm going to take some money from you because I'm going to build my house like this. So those are things, like maybe, I don't know, maybe somebody is listening to us, and there is a couple of lawyers in the community that is willing to take a couple of these cases and help these people that they got to into a situation that one of their neighbors is a lawyer that is suing everybody around them just to get some more money so he can build his house.
They give us all a bad rep,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's always going to be terrible people, and I think what I have observed is that difficult circumstances, whatever it may be, in this case of fire, but I mean, I've seen it in other situations as well. They bring out the best and they bring out the worst in people. I think that's common. If you look at I don't know if you want to call it tragedy or disasters, whatever the case may be, you're going to see some bad actors, but I think you see more good actors, and I try to focus on those people. And one of the things that we want to do here with our space is offer space to legal aid. My friend Emily Kane Miller, she had this space before me. I subleased it from Emily and her husband Nate Miller, and Emily started the legal aid clinic at Pepperdine University to provide free legal services to people impacted by the fires. And currently they're meeting in a church basement. And so what we can offer to them and to the people who are clients, pro bono clients, is a professional office space for them to come and to meet in. So I try to focus on the sort of the solutions, the helpers, right? People like legal aid. The Department of Insurance is actually incredibly helpful. I have found them to be very helpful myself. Although I'm a lawyer, I printed out my policy in full, took it to the Department of Insurance and sat there with them and walked through it and asked questions and marked up the margins of my policy.
Is that the State Department of Insurance?
Yes, the State Department of Insurance. So I'm kind of about trying to identify like resources for people, and so that's why I share things, publicly, because I can. That's something I can offer. I'm good at that. I'm a communicator. I'm an organizer, and hopefully I can help provide information to people that's a little bit more digestible and a little more accessible for them to be able to use.
Okay, I have a question. Just doubling back on the issue of grief and counseling and empathy and all of those things that you talked about earlier, but through a slightly different lens. I remember like when the fires happened and other incidents in my life that have been difficult. I remember like people calling and they're offering help, or they're asking how you're doing, and I just remember like talking to Oren and a few other friends at the time, and I was like, I don't really want to talk to any of these people. Like I don't want any help, and I just turned completely inwards, and there was nothing that they could really say or do. And I can only imagine like much tougher circumstances. Like it would be even times 1,000 million of how I felt or how other people around me felt. What kind of advice would you give people? And I get asked like less now, but like hundreds of people called me. Like I have a big network. People always ask, like, what can I do? Like, this kind of thing. I remember in the first few weeks when it happened, it actually pissed me off when they called me. And I remember sharing it with Oren. I was like, you can't do anything for me. Like, stop offering, like, these, I know it sounds, like, terrible, but I'm just being very honest here. I was like, you can't do anything for me. Stop offering, like, empty things that you can't, other than feelings that are, like, meaningless right now. Like, what do you say to the other side of the grief formula? Some people that like are trying to offer help. Mm-hmm. What's the right way to approach this?
Well, I say don't offer, just do, right? Like, because somebody who has just had their house burned down, or their child died, or they just got diagnosed with a fatal illness or potentially fatal illness, they are not in a position to tell you what you can do to help them, and that's why you're annoyed, right? Because it's like they're actually kind of unintentionally placing a burden on you, because they're asking you something and then you feel like you have to respond to them, and it's all kind of a waste of time, although they are well intentioned. So I say to people, don't ask, just do. So I'll give you some examples. So after Molly died, one of my good friends, she would just come every Sunday because she knew that people were sending us food, and we couldn't always eat the food. We were overwhelmed by food and whatever. So she rented out an extra refrigerator for us. She had it delivered. She would, found a spot for it in the garage. She would come every Sunday and she would organize all the food, and she would throw out the food that wasn't eaten. She would freeze stuff that could be frozen. She would donate food that wasn't, going to be used, whatever the case may be. And she just showed up every Sunday. And we would, that became like, when I look back on that time, that terrible, terrible, dark period of months, and I mean, I look back and that was like a highlight. It was something we could look forward to. Like some of our good friends would show up and they would just do something. Or, other examples of that would be like, okay, I just dropped off whatever it is, coffee. I'm sending you dinner. I'm arranging for your kids to, whatever the case may be, especially like the kids, who like all lost all their things. I know it was nice for parents that when other people helping them would come and just show up with like a backpack of activities to keep the kids busy, coloring books and pencils and games and things. Like, don't ask, just do, just be helpful. And if you can't do that, if you don't know what to do, then I think you can send something that's like, hey, don't feel any need to respond to this. I just want you to know that I'm thinking of you, and I'm here, and I love you. Like, you don't have to respond to me. You don't have to tell me what to do. Just know that I'm here. And then you just check back in and then try to think of something on your own. Like, it will become obvious. You'll be able to see, like, hey, can I send you guys dinner? Like, it's not difficult, basic stuff, basic things. Like if I'm in a terrible point in my life, like I'm not going to be able to do what? I'm not going to be able to manage all the food in my refrigerator. I'm not going to be able to deal with the laundry, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Just find a way to do instead of ask.
It's interesting. Sometimes people offer you things that you don't think you need and might feel like a burden, and then later on they turn out to be a blessing. You guys see me sipping from this coffee mug. I have a friend, one of my best friends from college, who lives in Massachusetts, and she said, I've got a friend here who does ceramics, and I'm going to send you these mugs. And I thought, I know we don't really have anything at the moment, but the last thing I need is something breakable and something I don't know where I'm going to put it. And I said to her, please don't. I mean, you're great. I love you, but I don't know. I can't figure out this mug thing. Anyway, a few days later, a box shows up, and it's the mugs. And she says, I just ignored you and sent it anyway. And I wrote to her about a week ago saying, this has been my mainstay. This is my favorite thing. When I come home or when I'm doing the podcast, I just have this nice big mug of coffee in these mugs, and they haven't broken yet. And, so sometimes I think, Kaye, you're right. You just do.
It's a comfort item. That's a source of nourishment and comfort. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
but then
it's amazing.
By the same token, if somebody gives you stuff you don't want or need, you can bring it here, and then somebody else will take it. So, because I told you that was an unintended thing here. It was like when people came to get items, and they were very happy to get the donated items because we have all this great stuff. And then they're like, well, can we? And I said, if you have new things, give it to me and we'll put it here. And like that was an added benefit because people have things they don't know what to do with. And so it's, I get that it kind of places a burden on you almost. Like if people show up, especially when you're not in a permanent housing situation and all that, and somebody shows up with like bags of stuff you didn't need and doesn't fit and you don't know what to do with it, that kind of creates sort of like, to your point about like when people are sending you a bunch of messages, then you feel that you need to respond to them. And it creates something else for you to have to deal with. That was actually the reason why our story became viral. I mean, Molly's story went all over the world. Somebody did like an analysis of all the social media, and it was like 150 plus countries. I mean, Molly has a worldwide group of fans and supporters. So, and she inspires a lot of people to do things. People we've never met. People on the East Coast will like organize their own beach cleanup inspired by Molly, which is amazing. But the reason why, I don't know. I mean, it's just the reason why that went all over the place was because when I was in the hospital with Molly for those 2 weeks, I was mostly alone. It was during COVID. Even John couldn't come in for like the first couple days. Um, and I just couldn't bear to talk to all these people that were reaching out to me. And I couldn't bear to repeat these things to people. So I would just post like an update on social media and just leave it out there. And I really wasn't even in any frame of mind to sort of see any responses or where it went or anything to know that it had gone so far reaching. But that was really born out of that. Those circumstances of just being like, oh my gosh, I'm overwhelmed by the amount of people who are contacting me and wishing me well and wanting to do something. And yeah, nobody can do anything for me right now.
Yeah. I mean,
Even my therapist.
I love the way you summarize that, because that's essentially like the same, we discussed it internally, like with just a few friends, and that's exactly the same conclusion we came to, which is like, if you see somebody out there that's struggling, a friend, it could be another thing, just don't say anything, just do something.
Just do, right?
Something
Yeah.
useful, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, and like I had a therapist who was so great. I had her for years, 6 years before Molly died. And after she passed, even she couldn't help me at all anymore. And she would tear up. She would start to cry and I'd be like, "Oh my God, I can't comfort you." Like I talked on my podcast about this ring theory, and I think it's good in all kinds of situations. And it's not my idea, but it's one I wish I had known earlier, which is just basically like the people who are in the center of the ring are the most impacted by the fire, the death, whatever it is. So the ring outside of them would be like their immediate family. And then the next would be their extended family and friends. And then the next are their colleagues or whatever. And so the idea is only put support and love in. If you have any difficult feelings or you're struggling with your feelings about my cancer or my daughter dying or something, like put that on the outer ring. Don't put it in. And I think that people would be well served to kind of follow that simple model, when dealing with people who are impacted by something really difficult.
I'm just curious, can you tell us a little bit more about the podcast and like, has it been like therapeutic for you as well as the Three Homeless Guys has been for us?
Yeah, I mean, so yes. So I always knew my thing really starts with writing. So I always knew I was going to write a book my whole life. And I mean, which is odd because I even knew that when I was a little girl in Fresno and I had absolutely no reason to think I was going to be doing anything. But I always knew this. And even Molly would say like, Mom, if you don't get to write your book, like I'll write it for you. I'll finish it for you. Because we didn't know if I was going to survive my illness. And so when Molly passed, a lot of people reached out to me about writing a book. And I was just I just couldn't handle it. I just was not in a position to do it. But I had amazing offers of support, like Sheryl Sandberg offered to write the foreword of the book that I hadn't even written yet, like just amazing, amazing support. So we started working on it, and it's like I need more time in my own process, to my life story has been, I think it's an interesting one, and I think it's all about if other people can relate or see themselves in me in any way, then I think that's helpful. But I decided, you know what, I'm not going to put this book out right now, especially because of the fires. Like now I'm totally focused on doing this. So I was like, I'm just going to put what I've written on Substack, because even though it's not perfect, even though it's not a published book yet, I just want it to live somewhere. Like I don't want to die tomorrow, which could happen to any of us, and not have like put my work out. So I'm going to overcome my perfectionism. I'm just going to put it out. So I started writing first on Substack. And then I was like, oh, hey, there's a podcast option on here. And like a lot of people had suggested to me to do a podcast. And at first I was like, what am I going to offer? There's so many podcasts. What do I have to offer? But I realized, again, I think it's all about like when we share authentically and openly, like what has happened to us and how we've dealt with it and how we find meaning. I think it's beneficial to others. And I know it's beneficial to a lot of people who have lost a loved one, because I hear from those people. And that's not something we talk about enough as a culture. So I thought, okay, yeah, I want to do that. And I have all of these people around me that I want other people to hear from. So I told you I moderate a group of grieving parents. I moderate a group of people who have cancer. And I just know all sorts of great and interesting people. And I think to your point about like, when you're doing something just for the sake of offering and giving something, putting something out there, and money is not your goal, then, good things automatically tend to flow from that, and so that's why I was like, okay, even though I don't have the bandwidth, even though it's a very bad time for me to even consider the idea of starting a podcast because I'm displaced from a fire, I'm just going to do it anyway. And what I love about it is I've totally just done totally on the fly. Like, it's not perfect or professional. Joel actually just helped me figure out which headphones and which mic to buy, because I haven't even had that. But I love, because other people are telling me, and I'm seeing them do it. They say, oh, I'm writing on Substack. Oh, I'm doing this now. Because so often we want to do something and we always are planning to get to it, but the circumstances don't arrive. It's like, oh, I'm busy working. Oh, I only if this, when I retire, when the kids are older. No, like, start now, start today. Start imperfect, start small, just do. And I it's funny because I say to the people who follow along and tune into the podcast and who read my writing, I'm like, I'm a little embarrassed because I know I could make it better with like professional editing and all of that. And it's like, no, what people want is authenticity. They don't want filters. They don't want fake. They don't want like people who are sanitizing their image. So, I may say something imperfectly, or an editor might do something to, polish it more, but actually people don't want that. That's kind of what we've seen in politics. That's what we're seeing all over the place. Is just kind of like, we know what's authentic and genuine and real, and people also know what isn't.
That's why we brought the baby on the podcast today. We want to seem authentic and real.
It's relatable. Yeah. Remember that guy? He was doing like a work, I don't know, Zoom or something. It must have been during the pandemic, and he was like in his like suit, very professional looking from the top up, and then the little kid came like toddling in the background, and then the mom comes and like snatches the kid back and everything.
Yeah, he was like a BBC expert on Southeast Asia or something.
That's right.
That was before the pandemic. And then all of a sudden everybody could relate, because now in the pandemic everyone was on Zoom. Yeah.
So it's like, you might as well just like be real with people, like just let people see the reality, because that's everyone. That's what everyone else is experiencing.
I love.
So let me. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Joe.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to ask you about this curious phenomenon, which both you and Ron have alluded to, which is that sometimes these experiences, which none of us would have ever wished for, like the fire and so forth, sometimes they do bring out better things. I mean, I don't know what my wife would say, because she's at a conference right now, but I think I'm doing a better job of contributing to childcare since the pandemic. At least I hope I am. And then a few days ago, I contacted my next door neighbor because I have to figure out how to fix my fence, which burned down. And he has a row of hedges right by the fence. And the really shameful part about it was I didn't have his phone number. And we've been next door neighbors for 6 years. Luckily, there were other neighbors who could give me his number. But I felt like, how inexcusable is it that I just relied on knocking on his door once in a while if my son threw a ball into his yard or something, and I didn't actually have this person's contact information. And I feel like the podcast especially has allowed all of us to connect more with the community than we were ever connected before. So I really do think that these little steps toward being better are giving us hope that we can rebuild, and that what we rebuild will be worth rebuilding, and a very special community that reflects how special the people are in it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I had the same experience. We were talking about that here at our gathering on Sunday, like that a lot of the neighbors don't know each other. They now they're getting to know each other, which, had the same feeling, like, gosh, I feel bad about that. I know them by sight, I know the dog or whatever, but I haven't actually introduced myself and met them. So, I think there's a lot of community building happening, and that's why I'm really optimistic. We had a great community to begin with, and now we're really getting stronger. So I'm optimistic about that. And definitely, I mean, I've talked about this on my podcast too. Like, um, we would have never wanted this to happen, but a lot of good things have already happened to us because this happened. Like, one of the things, like, because we would have never left Molly's house because we were just so, like, we can't, it's like a piece of her. We can't ever leave. And I realized, and it's part of the reason I think I started writing and doing the podcast and everything when I left, is like, I was really, really depressed in the house and I was really blocked, I think. And as soon as we got into a different space physically, I felt a weight lifted. Like, I needed that change. I never would have chosen it. I never would have done it. And it's like when I was forced to go live in Venice, and just be in a different physical space, like, I realized, yeah, you know what? I needed this. Like, this is doing things for me that um, needed to happen, and as a result are allowing me to express myself more creatively and give to the community and do other things as a result. Like, I'll give you an example. I realized, like, I'm in this house in Venice that's half the size of my house. My boys share a bed. They're 14 and 9, so it's not ideal. They've been sharing one full-size bed since the fires. Um, so it's challenging, for sure. But we're lucky, we feel lucky to have landed there. And I noticed one night as I was going to sleep, I was realizing, like, as I'm sleeping in this bed, this bed and the door, don't I can't see the door from where I am. And at my house in the Palisades, every single night since Molly passed, I would just, and I didn't even realize it until I was in a different space. But I mean, for a long time after she passed, I would just wail in my bed at night until my husband, like, could not take it anymore. He's like, I can't. You have to stop wailing. So for a long time, I was crying, and then every night after that, and I didn't even notice it, but, like, I would just stare at the door, and I would wait for her to come in, like she would every night. Mom, can you come and lay with me in my bed? Can you say goodnight to me? Um, and it wasn't until I was out of that space that I was like, no wonder I feel like I go to sleep like that every night. Um, and I needed a change, and I didn't realize it. Or even just going on Jay Conway every day, I would look. It's sort of subconscious. Like, I would look for Molly to come down the hill walking our dog, and there's just a million different things like that. So, um, you know, what's that song? Like, sometimes you can't always get what you want, but you get what you need. Like, I think that's true. I think that's true. And I think a lot of us are growing. It's there's this idea about, like, post-traumatic growth. And I think I definitely, I mean, you know, exemplify some of that. I hope I do. Is the idea of, like, you can let these really hard things that happen to you in life, or circumstances, what have you, like, weaken you and make you feel victimized and kind of stay in that space, or not, or you can have growth. And that's what I've tried to do. That's what I try to do every day.
Amazing. And what's the name of the podcast?
Yeah, this is funny. So because I did it just sort of like, oh, hey, I think, oh, there's a button here, I can do a podcast, I think I'll turn it on and start talking. I was like, I'm having a cup of coffee, I think I'll just call it Coffee and Commiseration. And I put no thought into it, and it was fine. But then I was like, I think that's a long word for people to look up. And my name is very unique, and people know Molly's name. So I was like, I'll just call it the Kaye Steinsapir podcast. Make it easy for people to find. So if nobody else has my name, like, I'll just make it simple. So I changed it to my name.
I love it.
So the great thing
Amazing.
about, like, like, I have nothing to lose. I have nothing to prove. I don't care what people think at all. So I'm just like, hey, I'm doing my best. I will make mistakes. I will say things inartfully. Last time I had my first guest on, and she was talking about the subject matter of losing her son to suicide, and she found him last Mother's Day. And we're having this very deep conversation, and at the same time, I'm like, wait, I have to like pay more money to Zoom to upgrade my membership or whatever to keep talking and recording. Like this is how like janky my podcast is. Like I'm totally learning on the fly. But I think that is an example for people to just be like, okay, it doesn't have to be perfect. You can just do it. And so as a result, my friend who was on the podcast, she's now writing. She's like, I feel, and she's a lawyer. So similarly, it's like, we're kind of type A. We're a little tightly wound. It's like, we want to put out something that's polished and perfect and everything. And she's like, I'm resisting the urge to not put it out. I'm just going to do it. And so she's doing it as well. So, hey, I'm happy with that.
Amazing. So just to spell your name for people, if they're looking for the podcast, it's Kaye, and Steinsapir, or Sapir, excuse me, Steinsapir.
Yeah.
And, Oren, any last thoughts before we close out?
No, thank you so much, Ken. It's great, like hearing your story. You know, it's like I think for everybody that is listening, the best way to cope with what you're going through is like helping somebody else. If like whatever you can do, I don't know. You are a gardener and you want to help building the gardens of your neighbors and make it green before they even rebuild. Do that. Whatever you can do to help. I think it's great. Thank you for sharing.
You know, one person hasn't had his say yet. Go ahead, Raphael.
He's been amazing, by the way. He really held it together. He looks so much like you. He's like your little mini me.
I know, everyone says that. Go ahead.
Cute.
Future Palisades resident, once again. There you go. All right. All right. Oh, spiky beard. Baby doesn't like it. All right. Well, that's it for. Oh no. I'm sorry.
He's ready. All right, guys.
All right. The 3homelessguys.com is our website, and if you don't like it, you can have his reaction or like and subscribe. You can write to pod@3homelessguys.com.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Sorry about that. Bye-bye. Thanks, Kay.
Thanks for listening to 3 Homeless Guys. If this episode hit home, please subscribe to our channel. Check out 3homelessguys.com for RSS feeds to your favorite streaming service. Follow us on social and share this with a friend who needs to hear it. Drop us a review or shoot us a message at pod@3homelessguys.com. We'd love to hear from you. Stay strong, and we'll catch you next time.